I'm Teresa Carraggio, and this is Third Paradigm. Today, I'm responding to Russell Brand's interview of Matt Taibbi called How American Democracy Became Pointless. My title is going to be Jokers to the Left, Clowns to the Right, and I am so happy to be stuck in the middle with these two people who are my favorite people on the planet. And so I'm going to be talking about the power of laughter and domestic threat agents, yokel-bashing and the scolding class, trusting Allah but tying your media camel, the sanctity of sinecures, which I had to look up, positive populism, and humility as a spiritual principle. But first, I'd like to read a poem, and this is from my favorite poet in the world, Hafiz, and it's called Laughter. And typically, my friend Joe Riley, who sends out Panhala, which is a poetry blog to thousands of people around the world, he always sent this with this photograph of this baby that was being held in its dad's hand. And it was so tiny and it was laughing. So this is Laughter by Hafiz. What is laughter? What is laughter? It is God waking up. Oh, it is God waking up. It is the sun poking its sweet head out from behind a cloud you have been carrying too long, veiling your eyes and heart. It is light breaking ground for a great structure that is your real body, called truth. It is happiness applauding itself and then taking flight to embrace everyone and everything in the world. Laughter is the pole star held in the sky by our beloved, who eternally says, "Yes, dear ones, come this way towards me and love. Come with your tender mouths moving and your beautiful tongues conducting songs, and with your movements, your magic movements of hands and feet and glands and cell dancing. Know that to God's eye, all movement is a wondrous language, and music, such exquisite, wild music. Oh, what is laughter, Hafiz? What is this precious love and laughter budding in our hearts? It is the glorious sound of a soul waking up." So one of the things that Matt says is that he feels like humor is a unifying force. And he looks at Richard Pryor and how that was a time that you could see black and whites coming together and just having fun. It gives you a way of not taking yourself too seriously. And it also just makes people a little bit braver in the face of what seems like insoluble problems. It gives the truth that the emperor has no clothes. And I've been thinking lately about how I think there's a way that cognitive dissonance, when there's a difference between what you know to be true and what you see being said, then I think it creates this tension in you. And humor, when someone points out the obvious and points it out in a way where it's like, oh, of course, we all know this is obvious, that it releases that tension with a zing. And so humor is that thing that just pops, that just makes it where you are laughing not just because it's funny. You know, you can have mean humor and be funny, but you're laughing because it makes sense and it's funny. This was particularly brought home to me because last Monday, the Department of Homeland Security released something saying we are in a high threat environment. And this threat is because there are information out there, dis, and malinformation that is being spread on the internet. And these are foreign influenced and domestic threat agents who are undermining trust in our U.S. institutions. And at first, I was like, oh, this is horrible. This is really jeopardizing free speech. How can they be doing this? And it was really depressing. And then later, after I listened to Matt Taibbi, it occurred to me, this isn't what they're doing because they're strong. This is what they're doing because they're losing. Imagine domestic threat agents, housewives like me. Oh, that, domestic terrorist cell that's meeting at the farmer's market, at the raw milk stand. And there's another one over there with the moms who are gathering in the playground. This is so ridiculous that when it occurred to me that they were just flailing on their way down, I started dancing in the hot tub, and I have felt so light ever since, because it's just clear to me that the more that they do things like this that are utterly ridiculous, the more that we know that we are winning. Matt Taibbi is so hilarious, and some of my favorite phrases from him has been talking about yokel-bashing as the last group of people that you can feel free to ridicule, and how that's been going on while meanwhile the rich and the billionaires have been multiplying and making out like bandits. But instead, we now have what he calls the scolding class. Isn't that great? And he looks at going back in time and holding people accountable by looking at what they said before. Someone he partners with is Matt Orfilia, who does these montages that take off from things like the going back in the time machine and seeing snapshots of what people have said and just making the hypocrisy of their stances now in scolding so apparent. One of the things Matt mentioned in this interview is that he started out wanting to be a fiction writer, and he mentioned some books. Catch-22 was one of them. And I've been reading Kurt Vonnegut's Pity the Reader, which is on writing. And he actually seems like what he wanted to do was tell the truth in a way that journalism couldn't do. So for him, he went into fiction to be able to tell a truth that wasn't possible in journalism. For myself, I'm so happy that Matt went the other way, because it is such a joy to read him. One really good question that Russell asks, among many, is, what media outlets do you trust? And what Matt said was, he quoted, "Trust Allah, but tie your camel. Always be a critical reader, because you can find the truth anywhere. But you also can't read anything without always engaging and looking at, how do I tell whether this is true?" And if you've watched other of my videos, I have formulas for that, for the kinds of things that you look at, for conflict of interest. How does someone benefit? Does someone take a risk by posting what they are? Matt's point, go to the source and always be skeptical, but make sure that first you trust yourself to know how to discern what is true from what is someone trying to pull one over on you. Tie your media camel. Early in the episode, Matt talks about the sanctity of sinecures. And I had to look that up, because in my head, Russell and I have this little tally going for who knows the most big vocabulary words. So I've got to concede that one to him. So sinecures are a salaried position in which one does little to no work. And it was interesting that it comes from an ecclesiastical position in which one saves no souls. So what he's talking about is this machinery of government, this bureaucracy that needs to be protected. So if what we're really talking about here is not Democrats versus Republicans, vaccines versus anti-vaccines, what we're really talking about is the corruption in government agencies, not the elected positions, but the 99.99999% who are the machinery of government, who stay the same no matter who is in elected office. Those are the people that this protects. It protects that entire slush fund. So if we're saying we need to censor information about corruption in government positions, and the government is going to be the one who decides who is actually saying things that undermine trust in government institutions, it's not going to be the people who are looking for that who are not going to know the truth. The people who are saying we can't be trusted to know fact from fiction are the ones who are in favor of censorship. So if you, of course you aren't, but if someone is in favor of censorship, they need to repeat after me. I'm too stupid to tell the difference and do my own research, because that's really what they're saying. They're saying they're not capable, and they're the ones who aren't going to have the evidence, because this is information we're talking about, not opinion. They're not going to have the information that other people around them do. One of the criticisms my friend's son had was that Matt Taibbi doesn't have a plan for how to fix things. Now, Russell and Matt talked about a plan. They talked about how devolution, as much as possible, something that is local, something that is under the control of people, how that would be a better way of doing things. And Russell said that the idea that systems have this fundamental assumption that people are bad. And that is why Russell is so close to my heart, because that's what I look at in my book, How to Dismantle an Empire, is that when people behave badly, systems are to blame. And we need to design systems that are giving people the same credit for integrity that we want to be given to ourselves. So that brings up the last thing of humility as a spiritual practice. That if we have humility of saying, I am no better than anyone else, then we're going to look at how hopeful we can be, because we know that if we're no better than anyone else, everyone else wants exactly what we want. Everyone else would do exactly the same things that we would do if we had control and responsibility for our own lives and for our families and for our communities. And that is a beautiful message that Matt says he loves about Russell, that it's always, hey, we're going to get there, and we're going to get there together. And so that's why, even though there are jokers to the left and clowns to the right, this is right where I want to be, stuck in the middle with them and you. Thank you. If you enjoyed this, here's another one that I think is just as fun, and here's a whole playlist that you might like also. Thank you.